Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order of November 16th, 2017, the Brisbane City Council. And we had a closed session beforehand, so we'll start out with a report out from closed session.
Council met in closed session to discuss pending litigation, SFPP versus City of Brisbane. Council provided direction to its counsel, but took no action concerning the litigation.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
For people that don't know, for people that don't know, maybe Ivan can introduce himself since he's not here all that
Our
often.
Deputy City Attorney.
Sure. Ivan Delventhal, Deputy City Attorney. I'm filling in for Michael Rausch, the City Attorney. I work in the same firm as he does, and I'm going to do my best to ably fill in for him tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, Ivan, every time you're here, we tend to have long meetings, but we're going to do our best tonight to move things along.
It's got nothing to do with you.
Did we just jinx it?
We did.
No, did that happen?
Well, welcome.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Heaven forbid.
all right. So we'll start off with the call to order. If you would please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Please note for the record that all council members are present.
Thank you. We have adoption of agenda. Go ahead.
So I had a request to move the item concerning G3 under Mayor Council matters up in the meeting.
Item A.
That is,
Which one are we talking about?
that is under Mayor Council matters. Yes, item A.
Oh, okay.
Item A.
Okay.
Can we move it to after the consent calendar?
Sure. And that should go pretty quickly. Okay. And with that, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have an agenda. Oral communications number 1. This is a chance to address the council on matters not on the agenda. I have one slip from Allie Cadillac. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I'm here representing HIP Housing tonight. I was here with you last year, so kind of the same spiel. But on behalf of HIP Housing, I would like to thank the Honorable Mayor and the members of Brisbane City Council for your continued support of HIP Housing. Research done by the County of San Mateo explains that due to housing unaffordability, 63% of workers in the county live somewhere else. The result is unbearable traffic congestion and long commutes for all of us. HIP Housing's creative housing programs create housing solutions for low-income families, seniors, and workers in our community so they can live closer to where they work. As a token of our appreciation and a reminder of our partnership throughout the year, I'd like to present the Council with our 2018 calendar. This is the 17th calendar that HIP Housing has created, filled with information on our housing programs and children's artwork from students in kindergarten through 5th grade in the county. The children drew a picture of their house and explain what my home means to me. We ask that you help us spread the word about our home sharing program, which for many people searching is their last chance of finding affordable housing in San Mateo County. We have 5 people seeking housing for every 1 person who has space in their home. So please let your contacts know about this valuable resource.
Well, thank you, Allie. Hey, Allie, I just have a quick question for you. Have we increased the amount of folks participating in the HIP Housing program in Brisbane?
So we have 4 clients right now throughout our different programs in our property. We didn't match any new home sharing clients this year, but we did interview 13 that are in different states of pending.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here in Brisbane?
Yes, in Brisbane.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and for the county, we did 196 new matches this fiscal year, and we have 711 clients just in home sharing, a mix of new and old matches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And we received your invitation too.
Excellent. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak during oral communications number 1? Seeing no hands, we'll move on. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. We have 3 items. City Council minutes of October 16th and 26th, as well as ordinance number 622 regarding the housing element program.
Madam Mayor, I would like to remove item A for a brief correction.
Okay,
And with that, I would approve items B and C.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item A.
And on item A on page 3, the third paragraph down, where it states council requested more information on various items on the Parkside plan, I believe that the last sentence where it says that keeping the development along Quarry Road to only 3 stories, I believe that we suggested that the entire development be retained at 3 stories or below. And I wanted to make that correction.
Yep.
Okay,
And with that, I'd make a motion to approve the item A, the minutes of October 16th.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Excellent. Moving on to the presentation regarding G3. This is funding projects of community volunteer groups G3. So
So this
is it
was,
I'm sorry, maybe it's not a presentation. I don't know do you want to start this off?
I think it's just council discussion
Discussion,
about
okay.
what we had talked about, possibly funding or giving some money towards the project. And so I've talked to a member of G3, and I think that they wanted to retain autonomy in what they do and how they do it. And so my thought was, if, as a council, we wanted to make a donation to their efforts, as in a credit at Brisbane Hardware, if we're able to do that through staff, where they could use it at their discretion and not have any strings
Sure.
tied to it. And it wouldn't be paying any people that are involved with the organization, but just would be sponsoring them and helping them with needed supplies and keeping that money in the community. But I'm happy to hear from them or any members of the council if they have
Okay.
ideas or how much or any of those. kind of-
Actually, your proposal, I want to hear from the city attorney. 'Cause,
Okay.
yeah, we want to make sure that we're not doing a gift of public funds unless it's a 50C3.
Stuart's actually had some direct
Oh, okay.
conversations with them.
All right.
Right. So I have spoken with a member of G3 who then said that they contacted the other members of G3, and what we had talked about was potentially doing a $150 a month credit at Brisbane Hardware, and just like make that a month by month credit, not that it would carry over, and then potentially a $1,000 donation for items that would not be able to be purchased at Brisbane Hardware. And they also get a number of their donations for lumber and stuff like that from Golden State Lumber.
Okay.
So that's what I had talked to a member of the G3, and that's what we had talked about.
Okay.
And see, Ivan, is there any issues with that?
I believe your question was around a potential gift of public funds concern or something like that. I think as long as there's a public purpose that can be demonstrated by this type of a credit, then I don't see any problem with that.
And what we're going to work on, Thomas, you said? Thomas?
We've been working on visitation.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think the next project that I was told they were going to do, or one of the projects, was the mural on the side of Julie's Deli.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I know they've done the planter boxes and the plan.
No, we appreciate the volunteerism for sure,
And we just want to support it in any way we can.
your group and everybody doing all the hard work on that.
So, can I have a follow-up question with that, Ivan? So you said that the credit is fine. What about, because there's a combination of both credit and just a check in general. So is a check okay as well, or only a credit?
I don't see any distinction between a credit versus a check.
Okay.
It's still public funds, and so
Right.
the analysis really would would center on the question of whether a public interest or public purpose is furthered by it.
Okay.
Okay. Would anyone from G3 like to speak?
Actually,
Come up to the microphone.
Tag, you're it.
thank you guys. Thank you. My name is Sue Cochran, and I represent G3.
Raise the microphone.
And
There you go.
these are some of my gangsters. Right over there. Right over there. We would love to receive any funds that the community can give us, whether it be persons in general, from the city, other organizations. We haven't really gone out and asked for anything. People have given us monies, which is fantastic. And we've received so many donations: Golden State Lumber, Brisbane Hardware Store, Recology as a source of dirt, Fence Pro for wood, thank you. All of our labor is free. We have 14 members. Nobody is paid for anything. It's all free labor. And I think that the city is beginning to see what we're doing, I hope.
Yeah.
I've heard it a lot, and I so appreciate that you guys want to have a vested interest in our group. Love it. I love the fact that we can have money coming from the Brisbane Hardware Store because they're local. We do spend money there, although we don't spend a lot of money there. A lot of the money is spent on the brackets that we put the planter boxes up with, the solar lights. What else? Ladies? Plants, although a lot of those are donated. And we're hoping that in the future that we can kind of expand. I can't give you more details than that because we're gangsta style. We're going to keep expanding. And believe me, it's going to be wonderful. We do have a mural in the works. The paint for that is very expensive. We're all working on that. Labor is free. So I say thank you, and if I can give you more information, I will.
Great. Can you tell us anything about the mural? What
The
what does it
mural,
depict?
well, okay. It's going to represent a hillside with poppies going up the wall, and then from time to time might appear a dog on the hillside looking down at the plug park.
Cute.
Great.
Anything else?
I love it.
Great job, Sue. I mean, it's really making a difference on
Thank you, Clark.
Visitation Avenue.
Okay. And one more thing I might say is it's not an artistic endeavor, although it is. It's not a gardening endeavor, although it is. It's keeping our streets and our main drag beautiful and charming. And we have an amazing guy named Frank Martin. Hey, Frank. He sweeps. That's what he does for us. He sweeps our streets.
I saw him on Bayshore Boulevard.
Oh, he does that too. It's crazy. He does that for 7 Mile House. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, John Quilter used to do that.
Yeah, he did.
So I have a question. I've seen
Yes.
the bigger square boxes across from the Brisbane Inn.
Right.
Is that, and I saw a cone that said G3.
That is
so
G3.
that's G3.
All that lumber was donated
beautiful.
by Golden State Lumber. We put 3 planter boxes there. The succulents were all donated by G3 members and others. Dirt was donated by Recology. Labor was free.
And whose property is it on?
That is the Brisbane Inn.
Okay,
And they said yes.
great. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate
Okay.
all that you're
We love doing it. We do.
Happy to work together.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any obstacles that you've been running into or things that that you potentially may need our help with in overcoming? Or is there a big need that you have right now aside from just, wanting some monetary support? Is there anything else that you feel like the city could help you with?
Here's one of our main goals is that when we went out to beautify our street, our Visitation Avenue, we said, what can we do that won't take money from the city? What can we do with private citizens that won't require city regulations that won't interfere with that? So we haven't really come across anything that says there's an obstacle. In the future, I do see down the line maybe needing some help with the plug park, because that is city property. And we would like to potentially develop that into a different site, a public eating area. We've talked about painting trash cans. We've talked about, ladies? Hanging baskets. I mean, everything's been out there, but so far we've tried to eliminate the city being involved because we don't want to burden the city anymore, because we can do what we're doing just with the volunteers and the donations, if that makes sense.
So I know, Madison, you had talked about having staff look into painting utility boxes. Is that something you?
I haven't gotten feedback from staff on that
Okay.
yet, but I think that would be something that we would partner with G3 on.
Right. I think Lisa Greenlee looked into that, and PG&E would not give her permission, and AT&T would not give her permission.
I think it's only cable boxes
Yeah.
that you can touch, but I requested a subcommittee on that, and I haven't gotten feedback yet on whether we're going to move forward with that, but it's still something that's like in the mix.
Okay. I know they've done that in South.
Yeah, other
Francisco
cities
and
have
other-
figured it out, so I'm sure we can figure it out as well. But
Communities.
yeah, I anticipate that would be something where we would have, artists tackle a canvas that large versus it'd be like a community day where you can come out with your 3-year-old and paint a box that big. So, I think it would be selected artists from town that would, paint something like that.
We do have 4 artists, 3 gardeners, 2 contractors. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Hold on, Sue. We do have a representative from PG&E, so maybe we can
And
have
here's
them
Renee.
on up.
She's
You can ask them
she's
that question, Councilman
Right.
Davis.
I have one question. On the senior center, could we put flower boxes on the visitation side? Kind of the upper ones?
Talk to G3 about that.
Well, we'll probably the best thing is talk to staff, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I do have a question for G3. So, people are watching tonight and, taking in all this great information. And of course, they've seen all your wonderful work. Now, there might be some folks that say, hey, how do I sign up to be a G3 member? Is that possible? Or
It's a big orientation. You got to go through a lot of.
You're very selective.
a lot of questions.
Background
Actually,
check.
right now we're not really looking for any more volunteers this season,
got it?
because we're kind of it's winter. Not a lot is happening, but we welcome money.
Okay.
We do
Okay. Yeah.
cash. And
Yeah, we do too.
yeah, I know.
Actually, the city is a nonprofit organization.
It is.
So, not a question for you, a question for my fellow council members. Do we need to re-agendize this with a monetary amount?
Why don't we bring it back to you at the mid-year budget? In the meantime, we can just implement it. It's a small enough. I think we can administratively do it.
Okay.
And I had a follow-up question. So, and right now, if people donate directly to G3, it's not tax deductible. But it seems like if the city is going to be supporting G3, then maybe it's a good idea to set up a special account so that if people want to make a check out to the city and get their tax donation, then it can go through to
But
G3. Or is that? I just
Well,
want
it
to
just,
we look in.
that gets kind of complicated.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
complicated.
just a thought. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you for coming. Keep up the good work. Okay. So we'll move on.
So we don't need to make a motion or anything?
I think we got what you want.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay, moving on to next item is public hearing. Consider adoption of resolution number 2017-51, amending the land use element of the general plan and introduction of draft ordinance number 623 to amend the zoning ordinance to be consistent with the revised general plan.
Ken, I don't think your microphone's on.
No. No.
No. There we go.
Oh,
There we
Now
go.
we're getting a little
That's
bit.
better.
There you go.
ah.
Thank you. So, starting from the top. This item is to amend the land use element of the 1994 general plan and to introduce a related zoning amendment. The objective of these proposed amendments is to achieve consistency between the general plan and zoning in the Northwest Bayshore subarea. This was initiated as part of a program to address M1 manufacturing zoning and general plan inconsistencies on a citywide basis. By way of background, in 2015, City Council adopted a resolution of intent to initiate zoning amendments to bring the terminology used in the zoning ordinance for the then existing M1 manufacturing zoning into conformity with the terminology used in the general plan. The general plan had eliminated the manufacturing designation when it was adopted. At the time of Council's 2015 resolution, there were 4 different subareas with M1 zoning. These were Northeast and Northwest Bayshore, Southeast and Southwest Bayshore. Earlier this year, City Council adopted zoning amendments within the Southeast and Southwest Bayshore subareas to change the zoning from M1 to TC2 and open space to be consistent with the general plan. Then to the north, the M1 zoning within Northeast Bayshore subarea is being addressed through the ongoing Baylands planning process. That leaves the M1 zoning within the Northwest Bayshore subarea, which is the subject of the set of applications before you tonight. Although the 1994 general plan has the area designated as PD SCRO, which stands for Planned Development, Subregional, Commercial, Office, Retail, the zoning is split between planned development and M1 manufacturing. Across the Northwest Bayshore subarea, there are significant land use and geographic differences. This subarea extends from the Technology Park at the south end, bordering Guadalupe Canyon Parkway, and then across the vacant lands of Peking Handicraft and Levinson properties, which have fairly steep slopes, and then across the flatter PG&E Martin substation site and the 7 Mile House to the far north. The marsh area at the north edge of Main Street, which is at the center of the photo shown here, is not part of the proposed amendments, as it's already consistent with the general plan. All total, the subarea is approximately 87 acres. As I mentioned, it's designated PD SCRO in the general plan, while the central and southern portions are zone plan development consistent with that land use designation. The north end is zone M1 manufacturing. Also, although the PD zoning is consistent with the general plan designation, the general plan also notes that the PD designation is intended primarily for vacant lands. While the central portion is still vacant, the north and south areas are not. Given that background, the proposed amendments would be to address the subarea on the whole. So I'll briefly outline the proposed amendments, starting from the south and then working north. So for the south area, the general plan and zoning would be amended to extend Crocker Park trade commercial area over the Brisbane Technology Park, since the Technology Park was developed consistent with the Crocker Park standards. And that's both in terms of development form as well as the uses of office and research and development there. It also already serves as a kind of northern gateway to Crocker Park, if you will. There would be no changes to the zoning text necessary that would affect Crocker Park. Rather, the amendments would be to the general plan and the text and the map there, as well as the zoning map amendment to extend Crocker Park to the north. Then for the central area, it would be renamed from Northwest Bayshore to Guadalupe Hills. Although it would be renamed, it would retain the existing PD SCRO designation and the planned development zoning. which is consistent. And also it would keep the specific plan requirement. So that area would be changed in name only. There would be no zoning changes since it's already zone plan development. For the northern area, PG&E substation and the 7 Mile House, a new commercial public utilities land use designation would be added to the general plan, and it would be rezoned from M1 to CPU for commercial public utilities for consistency. That area would retain the Northwest Bayshore sub-area name to reflect its geographic location within the city. So the uses would be narrowed from the broader SCRO general plan designation, and the zoning ordinance would include a new CPU chapter as Chapter 17.22. Likewise, the zoning map would be amended to reflect that change to CPU. Note that last week, PG&E provided comments requesting a couple of minor edits on the proposed ordinance, which were forwarded on to City Council. Staff has provided a revised draft ordinance as a supplemental handout, which came in after your packet. So that would replace what you received in the packet. Also, one last item is that there's 2 references to the general order of the California Public Utilities Code in that revised draft, and that should have read commission instead of code, so that edit should be included with the adoption of the ordinance. That summarizes the proposed amendments. In closing, staff recommends that City Council adopt Resolution 2017-51 and introduce Ordinance 623 to amend the zoning ordinance to be consistent with the revised general plan. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
But I have one. So, Ivan, I know this is, you're probably just getting in on this, but did, or John, and did you guys check with council and agree with what PG&E's changes were and everything?
Yeah, we looked at the general order that they cited, which basically states that any discretionary processes that local agencies have don't apply to these types of facilities. They provided a copy of that. So we think that the new language, the edited language that's included in the draft ordinance makes appropriate accommodation for the fact that such facilities may indeed be exempted under general order of the Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, very good. And John, thank you for adding that historical language in there. I appreciate that. So that's all the questions I have. So.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
I don't have any questions.
Questions?
I do not.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to drag this out a little bit. On page 32 of, well, they're not numbered correctly because they're excerpts. So it's what's labeled page 32 in Chapter 2, the planning area. In the second to last paragraph, it talks about a survey prior to the 1994 general plan, identifying businesses and revenue sources. And it states that for fiscal years 1984 to 90, 54% of the city's sales tax and nearly 1/3 of all general fund revenues came from Crocker Park. However, in the past 3 years, key businesses have left Crocker Park and city revenues have declined. Is that still relevant? And what years is that referring to for the past 3 years? I think that that's something that's really old and is not relevant. And if it is, I think we need to have a date in there on when that's referring to.
Yeah, that's a good catch. It should have been from 91 to 94. That's the recent years. The problem with updating this sort of document sort of bit by bit is you have a lot of historical information that, again, isn't, in the present tense like it was when it was written. So I think changing the dates to reflect the previous years that it was referencing would be appropriate.
I would assume that it would be my intention that it should be brought up to date to, as of 2017, our revenues or businesses, how many we have in there, something that gives it some historical content instead of, in the past 3 years, because we don't know what year. One would assume that's 2017, since that's when we're revising this document. So I would like to see something corrected there, because I know that we have people looking at what our business ratios are and where our income comes from, and this,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that could be corrected properly.
I appreciate the concern. I think, again, there's a bit of a slippery slope. We change it here, and there's going to be other references in the document that are historic in nature. So, I guess I just, for clarity's sake, I might just recommend we make it clear that it's all based on the 94 plan, and then the dates referenced are from 91 to 94. Again, as part of a more comprehensive update, all this information needs to be updated. But the idea of doing it just kind of in a sort of a piecemeal basis, I worry it becomes internally inconsistent elsewhere in the document, and I would have some concern about that in terms of trying to update it here, but you have a whole other sections that are not updated, and you have inconsistencies being created. But it is a very, point well taken, and this information does need to be updated comprehensively.
Okay, it just seems like this is the right time to do it. While I'm not disagreeing with what we're trying to do here, it just seems that since we're doing a red line version and changing things, it'd be nice to have the context correct. And then, again, and we're looking at, under your reasoning that we're just updating some of the document, on the second paragraph on page 33.
Terry, before you go on, can I ask
Sure.
a question on yours, Madam Chair?
Sure.
So, John, what would be the appropriate time to bring that up to date?
When the general plan is comprehensively updated,
So the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes
All right, thank you.
Okay. In the second paragraph on page 33, we state that Crocker Park served by GVMID, and we took out that a study is currently underway to evaluate whether water storage capacity is needed to meet fire protection standards, but we don't replace it with any result of that study. We just take it out, and we don't know what the determination of that study was. So again, that seems inconsistent with making the changes. On the last paragraph on that page, it talks about CNEL decibels of 65 along Valley Drive, and to be consistent with the document, I believe it should be 65 dB or more, which is where it's stated in the rest of the document for noise levels of 65 dB or more.
So first on the question of the water distribution, I spoke with the city engineer about that work in my effort to kind of make it as current as possible without getting too much, as John said, inconsistency built in here. And he did indicate that that was done, and that there were improvements made back in the day, and I wish he were here right now to elaborate on that, but I did confirm with him that did meet the fire protection standards.
Okay, but my concern is that because we're giving a document to change zoning and to give somebody a guideline on what they're able to do and what they're able to develop, that if there is a lacking in the water for fire protection for either Guadalupe Hills, the new designation, or for Crocker Park, that it'd be good to have in there if there's more information on that study available. if that makes sense.
It may be that we can insert a sentence that essentially states what the result and the action was by the city, and that could be
Or what the current status is.
right.
If the current status meets water suppression needs. I mean, if we're bringing the document up to current levels, I just think it'd be nice to bring it up. In page 34, on the third paragraph, we took out a lot of information about a study about contaminants in the PG&E land. And it states that there was a study being done, but there's no, at the time of the 94 general plan, but it doesn't give the results of that study.
Well, in regard to the text that was struck out, that's because, as Ken's pointed out, we've created a new Guadalupe Hills sub-area, which is relevant to that area, so that's text has been imported into the Guadalupe Hills section.
Okay, but this is about the PG&E property and contamination there. I believe. I see where the marsh and the slippage was transferred over to the proper subtext, but I didn't see where the contaminants were transferred over.
Yeah, can you point out where the text was transferred to? Because I'm not seeing it either.
A little confused because on page 34, there's a paragraph that says, it's 1, 2, 3. The fifth paragraph, soils on the PG&E properties have been contaminated by materials generated by gasification plant. Remediation plan was underway under the regulatory authority of DTSC at the time of the writing of the 94 general plan. More information on subsurface contamination may be found through DTSC. I'm not sure what more you were looking for.
One would assume since 1994 for the toxicity report, something would have been done by now. Or maybe not. And if not, then we should maybe strike it all. I'm not sure.
So we added Clark had suggested some language that was added into the Guadalupe Hills that pertained to the marsh area. And this would go further. That's a separate section, though. And this similarly remediation efforts, and it'd be tough to summarize into all the efforts, but essentially there have been various efforts in different parts of the site to address contamination. For instance, in some areas it's been capped.
So was a remediation plan done for that area?
If we're talking Levison Marsh, Terry, because that was remediated and accepted, I think, in 2004. There's the documents in here showing that. So I had to add the historical language.
Okay, well,
about how they did it, and mainly it was the city of Brisbane, PG&E, and the city of Daly City, and it was to alleviate the
runoff
issues in was it Midway Village is what it was called, yeah. And so that's why I had to add the language here, but it also in the document here has the DTSC order, I think, and the release basically.
So would we want to have in the remediation plan was completed rather than just strike it out and have it be sort of vague?
Let's see. Contamination.
If it was completed.
So what I might suggest on page 34, that paragraph that you're referring to is where it says more information on subsurface contamination may be found. I would just say, I would add contamination and remediation efforts may be found through DTSC.
Okay.
Since it's such a broad
you're
area.
taking out references to prior contamination, but we're not saying really what was done, and since we're taking out that historical information, I just think it would be useful to have in the document.
Well, they did say what was done under the Guadalupe Hills paragraph. If you go to
Right.
the fifth one down, that's kind of the synopsis of what was done. And in here, I don't know, maybe the language can, I'm hearing what Terry's saying, because DTSC did accept the remediation efforts and everything like that, and it was, just to be monitored, right? When that is, I mean, it seems like it'd be a better language instead of just saying, go check with DTSC. I don't know.
Yeah, we can certainly add more definitive language as to there's a wrap that was, there was a final closure or whatever the final action that the regulator took, and a reference a date if that would help.
Yeah, because I, read that. It was pretty interesting to go back over that. And that was in 2003 when that was accepted, January 2003. And that's probably, Terry, if you turn towards the back here.
Yeah, and I found some of that information.
1/8 of an inch? No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I found some of that, but I just,
Yeah.
Looking for inconsistencies when we're looking at the document, I had the questions. One small thing that I did bring up very close to the beginning of the meeting was that we took out all of the calling different areas the quarry or the Baylands, but we didn't take it out of the Chapter 5 descriptions. We took it out of the text, but we didn't take it out. Well, we took it out of what we're calling it, but we didn't take it out of the text.
We can make that editorially consistent.
And then I have a question that's sort of not related to exactly what we're discussing, but I'm wondering why we would have the SRCOR district, or SRCR district, and then have it's considered commercial and commercial district, but yet it's also a housing district when it's called trade commercial, basically. And so I'm wondering why that designation would still be in there.
Which area are you talking about now?
The PDSCRO is, the SCRO makes it sound like it's retail office, kind of uses, but it's written in as also housing.
Again, just to clarify, the SCRO stands for Service Commercial Retail Office. That's its title.
Commercial
and there
Retail
is
Office.
There is in the narrative that housing can be considered in certain areas, but the title of it doesn't have housing in the title. That's just not the title.
Yeah, it sounds like commercial, but when you read the fine print, it really isn't. Just like Guadalupe Hills sounds like a housing development. To me. Doesn't sound like a industrial park, it sounds like a housing development. And if that's the intention, then that's what it should be, but
I thought the opposite, actually.
Pardon?
I thought the opposite, that it was being renamed to a more naturalistic, that's a word, kind of phrase, that it would, hills, for the butterflies, not for houses, so. You can interpret it in many ways.
So those are most of my little nitpicking on the document.
Okay, thank you.
So Terry, are you comfortable with staff massaging the language if we want to move forward with this on the items brought up?
I am. This would be, would we come back with it as a second reading, or is this something we're planning to approve tonight?
With the permission of the city attorney, we would, normally you would adopt the general plan language by resolution tonight, but we would hold off on that adoption and bring it back with you still introduce the ordinance because none of your changes were relative to the zoning text, and we would bring back the new general plan language with the adoption of the ordinance.
That sounds okay to me.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So I had a quick question. So in the northern area, where the staff report suggests that we would establish a commercial/public utilities land use designation, and make it more, take away some of the larger land uses that weren't being used for that area, and that's the PG&E and 7 Mile House properties. So my question was, now that we've fulfilled the noticing requirements, did that include noticing 7 Mile House, and are they okay with these changes as well as PG&E?
They were noticed as well, and they have not
They didn't-
indicated any input, and they were noticed as well at
Okay.
the planning commission
Okay.
stage.
So, one other question on that. Is it just PG&E and 7 Mile, or is the little mechanic facility next door part of that?
The mechanic facility is under the same ownership as 7 Mile House.
Okay.
Single parcel.
It's
And-
one parcel.
And to follow up on that, would that area be an area that would be allowable for the recreational or medical marijuana businesses?
No, it was not included in the zoning for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from staff? Okay. So this is a public hearing, right? So let's open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak?
I know we have a representative from PG&E here.
That includes PG&E. Would the PG&E representative like to come up?
If he wants to.
Never miss an opportunity.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Bill Chang, your PG&E Public Affairs Representative. Councilmember Lentz, thank you for the opportunity. Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, I want to thank staff for their collaboration and notifying PG&E of these changes and allowing an opportunity for PG&E to submit some minor edits that you see in your paperwork. And we have no further comments on the edited proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else like to speak? Nope, seeing no hands.
Motion to close public hearing.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Council discussion?
No questions.
Yeah, I'm ready to move forward with it.
Okay.
Well, I think staff's going to bring this back, right? So, is that,
Do you have direction? Do you need any formal action from us?
Well, I would request that you introduce the ordinance and continue the resolution for the
okay.
subsequent
General
meeting.
plan update.
I would like to make that motion.
I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Moving on to old business, item A. Provide an update from Jefferson Union High School District on the school bus for 2017-18 and 2018-19. Staff report, please.
Yes. On November 7th of 2017, the superintendent of the Jefferson Union High School District met with Clay and myself concerning the school bus situation. She told us that Michaels has been an unreliable provider of service for them that one of their drivers was needed to be replaced due to unsafe driving conditions or ability to drive, and then another driver did fail to show up in the morning. So they are, based on that, and they are planning not to renew any contract for next year. They are going to they're going to talk about it at their board meeting on December 5th, and then take action on it on December 19th, but the anticipation from the superintendent is that the school district would not be willing to enter into an agreement with us for them to provide school bus service for next year. In the past, this, from a little bit of history, this started in 2010 when the school district stopped funding the school bus. Part of that reason was that the state eliminated funding for transportation for schools, so they no longer had the money from the state to provide school bus transportation, so they stopped funding it. The city at that time took the money that it was putting towards enrichment programs, which Councilmember Conway, I think, got started in probably before I got here, so probably in the 1990s, which was going towards classes like calculus and was going towards a late bus only service to provide ability for people students who did after school activities to come back to Brisbane. The city was paying, at that time when we entered into a contract, with Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, and it cost approximately $100,000 or $81,000 back then to do the bus. That has increased over time. Back at 2015, 2016, the city got notified by CYO that it was no longer going to be able to provide the service from Brisbane to Terra Nova and Oceana high schools. The reason was there was a number of discipline behavioral issues that were on the bus. The city then went out and sought other transportation companies. We looked at all the different transportation companies that were that provide school buses in the area. Metro Trans agreed to provide the service. The contract with them was $100,000 a year. Again, there were behavioral issues on the bus, and Metro Trans had difficulty finding drivers for that school bus, and it said that they were not going to be able to provide service starting in this school year. The city has talked to Samtrans to see if Samtrans was willing to change any of its routes to have a bus go from Brisbane to Pacifica, and they were not. We also talked with commute.org, but commute.org is more of a commuter organization where they don't do point-to-point, but they do more of, as they do for our town, run a shuttle to BART and to Caltrain. And I know there are in other cities that they do run from, like for instance, they do run from Millbrae, Caltrain BART station to Mercy and Burlingame, but that's part of their running a commuter bus in that area. The other challenge with somebody like commute.org is that their buses are not school buses, and have to have a more than just a single bus trying to make that run on a daily basis. And we do need that bus to run 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. So, that's the challenge at commute.org when we asked them, and they were unwilling to do it. So at this point in time, the staff has, for the past number of years has, reached out to all the different types of transportation services, and we haven't had no takers on it, which is why we worked with the school district this year to have them do it, because they do have better relations with school bus providers. Last year when we were looking at it, the Brisbane School District had made a suggestion that if we bought them a new school bus and paid them $100,000 or whatever it would cost for them to be able to provide the service, that they might be willing to do that. I think, but at that time, the cost of a new school bus and $100,000 plus contract was more than what we needed to work with the Jefferson Union High School District. The method that the Brisbane School District does is not only do they provide for a driver on the bus, but they also provide for another adult on the bus. So that would increase the cost probably above the $100,000 that we currently pay just to be able to provide both 2 adults on the bus plus the cost of maintaining the bus and running the bus. And then the question would come is if the bus was not available due to it needing to be used for field trips, what would be the process that they would go through to ensure that our high school students were served? Because there are a number of field trips that they take that go away from the school district. So, I mean, so there would be some questions that we need to deal with through that. So we have explored different options, and at this time, it's bringing it back to council, hopefully early enough for parents to be able to make decisions as to what they would like to do with their children, with their students, as well as for the city council to give us further direction as to what direction they would like us to take on this.
Thanks, Stuart. Questions from the council?
I don't have any questions, but I'm ready to have council discussion on it.
Same. Okay.
We all got an email from a concerned parent, and I answered the email last night, and I don't know if the parent's here, but
I didn't get that.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but
actually,
I might have missed it.
all of our names were addressed to it.
Okay. All right. So you got it last night?
I didn't see it either.
We came yesterday about 3:30.
Okay.
I got it.
I'm sure I got it, then I just haven't seen
I
it.
didn't see it.
But one of the things the parent said is that a lot of parents are, willing to volunteer to help find a solution. I mean, what Stuart said is one of the issues that we have as a city is not being a provider for bus services like a school does. A lot of providers don't want to really talk with us or deal with us because we're a city. That's an issue. So, so a parent was volunteering to kind of help us find a solution, and I had indicated back that I'd like to take them up on that to get more parents involved, because right now a lot of people are under the impression that it's the city's responsibility to provide the service, and Jefferson Union High School District is really kind of getting off the hook, so to speak. They've done numerous bond issues and upgraded the schools and stuff that they need to include a bus service in the bond to provide that. But parents need to pressure this new superintendent and this Jefferson Union High School District School Board to work with the city of Brisbane to find a solution. They need to be part of this. And they're just skating scot-free. When we did, back in 1997, the right thing of doing stuff for our students that now has morphed into a bus service and has grown, financially from the $67,500, I think was the maximum that we'd do. And they came to us for that. The previous superintendent, Mike Crilly, came to us, and Brisbane did something that was really unprecedented. We put that into a resolution, and it's like turned into a bus service that a lot of parents now think that we're responsible for, and that's not the case, and it's like, I mean, it affects my family directly. I have a grandson in Terra Nova, a nephew just graduated last year. They used a bus service. You got a niece in 8th grade and granddaughter in 7th grade, another one in 5th grade, So, I mean, there's just a lot of family that's coming up through the ranks here, but, it's not a solution for, I think, the city to just keep putting money in. We're not sure what's going to happen at the end result, and it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for staff because this is not what they do. I mean, this is not their purview, so to speak, So Stuart, and kudos for you for, putting a monumental effort into trying. So, I think working with the parents group to try and come up with a solution, but the parents really need to put some pressure on this school board. The Jefferson Union High School School Board really needs to step up. And you know what? And they're not going to do nothing if you don't hear from you. And the new superintendent is not going to do nothing if they don't hear from you. And so, it's important that we as parents and everybody else pound them the way that the Brisbane City Council gets pounded, and this is not our job, so to speak. We want to do the right thing for our young citizens and stuff like that, but, we're taking the brunt of it. So this needs to change, and parents need to step up and go after the school board, who we elect, all of us, and this new superintendent, and they need to hear this from you. And they're wanting to say, well, why couldn't they go to Jefferson? Well, I went to Jefferson. It was a pretty good school, actually. And right now, it's being pounded. I hear rumors about things that it's like, oh, is that true? And then I hear from the school board that they're putting more kids in college than anybody. I know a kid that got a full ride scholarship to West Point out of Jefferson. That was unheard of. I didn't see that coming from a lot of other schools. So that's their mentality, but they're not communicating with our parents. And I think that we can bring them in to communicate with the parents, but the parents also need to go to their board meetings and say, hey, you guys need to pony up, just like you do with the Brisbane School Board. The Jefferson Union High School District needs to hear from the parents. Mm-hmm. They really do. And you can't put it on the city council to communicate with their board of directors. It's like, well, that's not in our budget, and oh God, we'd like to do the right thing. They need to be pounded by people who vote for them. That's the way it works. And and I'd love to meet with the parents group who wants to help with solutions. I think the 2x2, not to volunteer the 2x2, but I would personally volunteer, because this is ongoing, and we need to find something that's workable instead of this coming up every year, and Stuart and the rest of the staff spending a lot of time trying to find a solution. I mean, we're spending our staff time. It's just not just the dollar amount, but that staff time is taking them away from a lot of other things. And we got a lot of stuff on our plate, just other than the bus, so it's not easy. And to the parents, it's just not easy, and I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts too. But
all right, thanks, Clark. And I see there are people in the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Nope. Okay. Would like to?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I want to echo a lot of what Clark has said. I share the same sentiment. And I think it's got to be made clear that this is a school district issue. And I think a lot of times the city and the school district get lumped in together. But we really are separate entities, and we have different jurisdictions on what we really is in our purview. And I think for years we've been kind of taking over something that's really not in our purview in order to just get the job done. But at some point, we have to focus on the things that are really our job, and focus our resources in that way. I think it's not just about, wanting to get out of being in the bus service, so to speak, to quote Clark, but at this point, it's even if we wanted to, it's almost impossible because we've really exhausted all of our resources. Staff has looked into numerous different solutions, and so, I don't see that being a possibility for us to just go and contract with another bus service. We're going to have to come up with some more sort of other creative solution, because it's not a matter of like, oh, the city just doesn't want to pay for this anymore. It really is becoming like, even if we did, our options are non-existent because no bus service wants to take on this route. We've had providers threaten to quit, just a few months in, for a variety of different reasons. So, I feel like our hands are sort of tied. Even if this was something that we really did want to proceed with, we don't have very many options left.
Yeah, I agree. Harry?
I agree with where our other council members have commented on the school being the ultimate provider for the bus service. And besides just the money that we've put towards this situation, the staff time and trying to arrange the logistics and find the solutions has been extraordinary on the way of staff. They've been monitoring this. They've been basically that third person on the bus all this time, and it's very difficult for them because they've got no jurisdiction as far as behavior on the bus, as far as the routes, the timing. They've got no jurisdiction. So I would welcome, whether it be with a subcommittee of the 2x2 or a different subcommittee along with parents, to try to find a way to pressure the school district to provide the transportation that's needed.
Yeah, I agree with my council colleagues. As you know, I've always been, a strong supporter of getting these kids to school, and and when they first came, the parents came before us. They were in a jam, and even though the city council is in its own jurisdiction and the school district is in their thing, we're still part of the same solar system, and if we could help, we would help. But this has been a headache for us and city staff, and last year with the problems with the students and the safety of taking kids to and from these specific schools, made me feel like, I'm not feeling really comfortable moving forward with this. And then, in the staff report here, it says that Michael's also had an unreliable. They had to replace a driver due to unsafe driving on the route, and I agree with you, Clark, in that the solution needs to come from a whole joint effort. It can't just be the council. And so I'm not in favor of moving forward with funding this bus in the future. For the rest of the year, yes. But as far as continuing to try and find another bus provider, I don't want to do that anymore. I think when you look at this $6.5 million in property tax revenue that the school district gets from the territory that's within the Brisbane Elementary School District, and we have less than 100 kids going to their schools, and they can't find a way to provide that bus service, that's wrong. And so can our parents put pressure on the Jefferson Union High School District School Board? You look at the percentage of the amount of, again, our town compared to Pacifica and Daly City. We just don't have the same political clout. But, I think if we, started to address ways to, take some of that property tax revenue that really belongs to educating our kids, and maybe they might change their mind. So your recommendation, Clark, to have the school 2x2, working with parents, working with the Jefferson Union High School District trustees, I think is the way to go. But I think if we're continuing to fund the school bus, then they're not going to do anything, right? And we got to take this off the table and say, look, there needs to be, you need to work this out. Our kids belong to your district, and so you need to work with us to find a solution, not, okay, the city council is going to bail them out.
Okay. I agree with my council colleagues. I think we all want to do the right thing. We want the bus service to be provided, but we've tried, and the city just isn't in a position to find a vendor that is safe and that can reliably transport the kids to school. So there is a meeting coming up for the Jefferson Union High School District Board on December 5th. So I'd encourage parents to attend that meeting and to voice their concerns. It's interesting that the Brisbane School District, which is, K through 8, is willing to even strategize and be part of this discussion. Maybe it should be that the Jefferson Union High School District talks to the Brisbane School District, and if that high school district is willing to, if we can get enough pressure on them and parents really rally for that to get the high school district to pay for it, maybe they can purchase a bus for the Brisbane School District that they can use, and it can be between the two school districts as opposed to city school district. That would be an ideal situation, because it really shouldn't be a city that's doing the operations, and management of the bus. It has to be through the school district. And, we've already expressed how we believe, our priorities are with respect to the funding.
Yeah, I think one of the parts is probably get Jefferson High School Union School District to delay making any type of permanent vote. And the only way that's going to happen is through pressure of people showing up at the meeting. I'll guarantee you they don't have very many people showing up at a meeting, and they have nobody showing up there over a bus service. So if all the parents in Brisbane get together and go over there en masse and they start doing a public hearing and stuff, they're going to listen. They will listen. They have to. They would be pretty ignorant to move forward without, stopping. And I think that's what has to happen, is you have to go there and display the anger there. Because the solution can't come from our 2x2. That's not working. They're saying, oh, we can't do it now. That worked for a year, and that's it. And so I think that's a first step. I know we had that one parent volunteering other parents, and like I said, I'm willing to, if the other half of the 2x2 is willing to work with them. If not, I'm volunteering myself. I do want to come up with a solution. I don't want to just brush this aside and say, well, that's it. We're the city, and we don't care. I mean, these are our constituents, and we care about our whole family, our whole Brisbane family, and so it's a solution. I'll guarantee you that the next recession comes, and if the city's paying for the bus, that's going to be one of the first things that's cut, and it'll be whack quick, because that's just the way it goes, and so.
Yeah. Madison.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I want to support Clark's recommendation to have this be a 2x2 issue. That, following our reorganization.
Yeah, 'cause I'm on the 2x2.
Yeah, that's a subcommittee I'd really like to be on. So that would be. I would be excited to work on that with you, Clark. Should the council, want me to be on the 2x2, but I have interest in solving that issue with you.
Okay. Clark, are you on both 2x2s with both school districts as well?
Pardon me?
Are you on the 2x2 for the Brisbane School District?
Yeah,
and
2x2.
they're
Yeah,
both?
the 2x2.
For both
both districts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. So. Sure. Come on up.
Renee Marmion, December 5th. What time is that school board meeting? Do you know by chance?
It's in the staff report, but it doesn't state the time.
It's not in-
They didn't have it on their calendar. I don't know. I just know when they had their.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I looked at their calendar. She did not tell us when
Or
in
when.
December. I looked at their calendar, so that way I could give that information to city
Okay. And
council.
do you know where those meetings take place?
I could check, and we can put that out on our weekly.
Yeah, I think that
Email.
would be really great.
And send it to the school districts, to the Brisbane School District,
Sure.
so that they can communicate it to the parents, reiterate it,
Yeah,
It's
North
not
Thursday
everybody that-
packets.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it has to happen fast, so.
Yep.
And
It's just around the corner.
we're going to be letting the parents and the children that are riding the bus now know that there's a in date, correct?
we don't have the information as to who rides the bus because the Jefferson Union High School District has that information. So I will contact the superintendent to have them inform the parents.
Right, thank you.
Okay, Barbara, come on up.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I didn't come down here to beat up on our city council. I'm aware that this is not supposed to be the city's responsibility, that it's really supposed to be the school's responsibility, although I'm not even sure if it's the school's responsibility now since state cut funding. I'm not really sure whose responsibility is it anymore. But I was a little saddened when I hear some of our council just kind of wanting to wash their hands of this issue, because, I mean, aren't we all supposed to be working together? This is a community. What about sustainability? We're all like freaking out about transportation and carbon emissions from transportation, and we're going to dump another 100 trips a day in the mix, at least, if we don't have a bus. So I would ask you guys, I mean, I know it's not your responsibility, but I would, and I know staff cannot be the lead on this. The school district has to be the lead because the school district is the one with the resources. But I would ask that the council and staff at least stay involved in as far as being advocates for this community. And I will be driving over there on December 5th, and if anybody would like to carpool with me, they're more than welcome.
Thank you.
And I just want to state for the record, I don't think any council member said that they were washing their hands of this. We all want to be involved, and it's all part of, our community, and we've never done that. So, and that's definitely not an accurate statement.
I think the council has gone above and beyond, frankly, with regards to this issue. And as I mentioned previously, even if this was something we were really excited to do and really were, wanted to be in the bus business, we don't have any more resources. We don't have anyone stepping up to the plate wanting to contract with us. So unless we buy a bus and hire a bus driver, have one of our staff drive, there aren't really any more options on the table. And that's why we do need to work with parents to come up with creative solutions, because what we've been able to accomplish with our resources is no longer working. So now we have to work with parents to do something and put pressure on the school board, or there's just not going to be a bus. We've exhausted all of our options.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. And the school districts, they'll come back and say, well, we don't offer school bus services to other students, so why should we offer those services to you? That's right. That's what they'll say, and they'll say, the responsibility is on the parents to get their kids to school. And of course, we as a city, said, hey, if we can help out, we'll try, and we've done it for a certain amount of years, but obviously we're at that point where we can't do it anymore.
I'm going to say this because the previous supervisor, when we had our 2x2 meeting, Lori, you'll recall, asked him, I said, well, why don't you guys provide the bus? He says, we don't have any buses. I said, oh, you don't have any buses? I said, how do your athletes get around? And they said, we contract. Right? That's what was said in the meeting. We contract the bus service. And then my granddaughter and I were driving from Sacramento, and she goes, hey, look, it's the Jefferson Union High School bus. And then staff contacted, said, well, yeah, we do have buses and stuff. And that's how this came about. Is like, I was like, specifically said you didn't have buses. And so, it was,
those buses.
Yeah, not buses for us to use.
Yeah. I mean,
we have no buses for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, so, and I understand, that they got the state money cut and they don't want to provide the bus service, but, they need to be part of this too. They need to be part of the solution, so.
Yeah, well, when you do get together, I hope you address the situation with the property taxes. And I think there's a solution there. And I like your point, Lori, about bringing in the Brisbane Elementary School District. I think if a deal can be worked out where the amount of money that goes to each district from our property taxes is done in a more fair way, perhaps then that could provide the Brisbane Elementary School District with the necessary additional revenue to perhaps get an additional bus and maybe provide that type of service. And there are ways to be creative, but all the parties got to come together. But the main thing is it's got to be the parents getting on, the electeds and saying, hey, you need to come up with something. You can't just continue to, hide behind, the same things you've been saying, all these years. So just work with us, we'll work with you, and I think we'll come up with something.
Yeah.
I think the city manager wanted to.
Yeah, I just got an update on the location and time for the meeting. It's 7 p.m. on the 5th, and the address is 699 Ceremony Boulevard.
Okay.
That's the district.
Yeah.
That's where Shasta High School is.
Yep.
I believe so. I think it's Ceremony Del Rey.
That's where it is.
Okay. Excellent.
We have a member of the public who wants to say.
Yes, come on up.
Hello, Council. My name is Jolyn Rodriguez, and I have a daughter who is riding the school bus right now. And I just want to say thank you, Council, for everything that you've been doing. I have reached out myself at the beginning of the school year to kind of figure out what was happening with the bus service, because when we first started off, there was some inconsistencies with time, etc. Mm-hmm. And what I found out with talking to them I was talking to somebody who was she was part of this Jefferson School District who was part of the transportation team over there. And I found out that they do actually have a bus that's available, but where their difficulties was to find a company to support to be drivers. And what she was telling me is that it was difficult to hire somebody to take on that position at the hourly rate that they were being provided at. And so for them, they were trying to outsource it from people coming from across the East Bay to come do this trip, which was extremely difficult. And I think that's what the problem is for them to hold on to staff, is because if you have somebody who's trying to do the morning run and both afternoon runs, that goes into overtime. That person has to start driving or picking up the bus from wherever at 6:15 to get here at 7 o'clock in the morning. By the time they're finished and they get back here in the evening time at 6:30, that's close to like a 12-and-a-half-hour day. That's really hard on anybody. But I think if they were able to look at getting two part-time, somebody who would drive in the morning and then somebody who would do the afternoon shift, it might be a whole lot easier for everybody involved. It might take off a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. In terms of what I was hearing before about commotion on the bus, every year it changes with students graduating and new freshmen coming in. So every year is very different with the population that's on there. So I don't want to, I just feel it's kind of hard to keep hearing that, there was problems with disruptive kids from prior years. Well, that was prior years. We're dealing with a completely new population of students this year. So I think we kind of need to think about that too, that kids aren't perfect, but every year it's different. And also just yesterday, I actually wrote an email to the principal over at Terra Nova explaining my concern to her, and I was hoping that she was going to respond back to me, and as of now, I haven't heard anything. And I told her in my email, too, that there was going to be a meeting tonight and that I was looking for her support to please send out an email, because they're the only ones that have a list of all the parents that are riding the bus, to inform them that there was even a meeting tonight. So, I'm trying to do my part. And I would love to be part of this new parent committee, because I think it's just a matter of talking it through more and being more resourceful. I think it needs to be 2 drivers to do this run. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Can staff speak to some of those comments? I think one of the things that we were hearing from drivers is not only the route is kind of treacherous, but I thought there was, this behavioral issue has come up quite a few times, but I thought that was also with this new contractor in this school year, that was a concern that was raised again.
No, I think for this year, actually it's not the students who were poorly behaved. It was a driver who got pulled over by the police
I see.
for not driving safely.
So behavioral issues I have
not heard of any, but I'm also don't contact the school district to see what goes on at that
That's
point.
reassuring.
Because, I mean, I think, the benefit of having the school district have the contract is that they have then the responsibility for ensuring the discipline on the bus, and they have a better ability to assure discipline on a bus for students than the city does, because there is consequences if something happens on the bus and the school district says that child is not allowed to be in school. There's a different consequence than us saying that person's not allowed to be on the bus. As for previous, children misbehaving or students misbehaving, it did happen, and that was the reason why CYO canceled the contract, is because they had that. That was also the reason Metro Transportation decided they did not want to continue, was because of and I agree that every year is a new year, but when you sour the relationship with a company, they're not going to come back and say, okay, I'll try it again this year. And that's what happened with both CYO and Metro Trans, which is why, and the parent is right. What happened was the school district went out and they found a company in the East Bay to provide a driver, and they're providing the bus, and that is a very difficult situation. And that was one of the things that we had talked about at the city council meeting when I presented that contract, was just the cost of that was higher than it would be if it was somebody on this side of the bay. That's why this contract is more expensive than either Metro Trans was or CYO is, because both of those are located here and they had drivers who they could do the split shift potentially with. Whereas there, it's a person who's coming over from the East Bay, and in addition to the contract is if we need to put the person up overnight because they're not able to get back home, we will be paying for that. So I mean, it's very true that it is a difficult situation for that person. So hopefully that addressed the comments. But I mean, the biggest, I agree that every year is a new year, but unfortunately that is not how companies look at it.
Yeah. Stuart, I know you and I have talked about contacting the retired custodian who was the bus driver.
Yes, and I did do that.
At Larry.
I did contact Larry.
Yeah.
And what he said when I talked to him, that he's not really interested in having those many, doing that many hours. He's not interested in having to drive on the freeway, because that's not really what that's not really safe. And that, what the Brisbane Elementary School did was always have an additional adult on the bus. Mm-hmm. So, that's not something that we have done in the past. And if we were to do something like that, there would be an additional expense to do that. Or, you would need a parent who would be willing to sit on the bus. And then the question is always, how do you get back? If you're leaving from Brisbane and the bus is coming from the Jefferson Union High School District, and then you have the parent going from Brisbane to Terra Nova, and then the bus stop goes back to Jefferson Union bus yard, then there'd be a question of how would that parent get back into the city, and then how would the parent get to the bus to go take the afternoon bus, and then how would you have another parent going for the late bus? I mean, you're right. There are creative solutions to this, and it would take, I think it would take more of a conversation about, what are people willing to do, and and there may be a bus company that is more willing to work with the school district than the city to try and do it. There is, we haven't tried First Student. First Student hasn't taken the route yet. Maybe First Student might be willing to work with the school district. When we contacted First Student a couple of years ago, they never responded to us.
Right.
But, maybe 2 years later, I don't, their situation might be different, that they might be willing to do it. And then we've contacted some of the private providers, but the private providers, the big coaches say that's not really their niche. But, maybe, a group of parents might have a different answer, or maybe the school district might have a different answer than we get when we, as a city, ask that question.
So I have a question, Stuart. So the Brisbane School District has, I understand, offered to, if the city or some other source, maybe the Jefferson Union High School District, were to be able to pay for the purchase of a bus, the Brisbane School District said they would, and if someone paid for the operation of a bus, that they would provide a driver. Were they talking about a driver who's employed by their school district or a separate third party?
I know they have drivers who they employ. It might be a driver who they employ, but I also know that they provide a bus from Southern Hills over to Littman.
Do you know who are their drivers?
Well, it used to be, as Clark said, it used to be Larry. I know BJ is allowed to drive, has a bus driver's license.
Right.
So they do have people within that school district who drive, but they also have other responsibilities within that school district. Yeah. I mean, they're also the BJ and Larry were both the janitorial staff.
I see.
So, I don't know if the school district, having not explored it much further than that initial conversation, I'm not quite sure what the school district is truly willing to offer and what their expectation is of a contract would be.
Okay. I'd be interested in having the subcommittee, the 2x2, explore that further, because I've been on the field trips with BES where BJ is driving, and we're going on the freeways and with kindergartners or third graders I've been with.
Right. Kindergartners and third graders act a whole lot better when their parents are on the bus than high school students
Yeah, but
do.
50 kindergartners on a bus.
50 kindergartners on a bus is a lot easier than 65 high school students.
Did the
I'm
city...
just letting you know that I don't know, if when you think back to your high school days, the mixture of students who are on the bus is not the same as, in all the classes.
Yeah, actually, when I went to high school here in Brisbane, we had 3 Greyhound buses that stopped and that were full just to go to Jefferson.
And no one was smoking in the back, I would imagine.
No, they were probably, most of them were smoking in the back. So it was different day.
Did
60s and 70s.
Did the city look into the ballpark cost of a bus?
I do not remember what Ronan had told me, but I know it was in excess of $100,000.
I would be shocked if it wasn't. Okay.
Right. I was trying this, after it was brought to my attention by the mayor tonight that they were interested in doing that. I was Googling what buses cost, and, a new bus is anywhere, I guess, from $200,000 to $300,000. I mean, if you think about it, if one of our fire engines is $600,000, it's a similar kind of construction other than the seating. I mean, you have more equipment on that, so $200,000 to $300,000 may not be out of the realm of what it would cost to put together a school bus.
Yeah. But it would be interesting, though, to see if the city or the high school district were willing to purchase the bus, and the Brisbane School District could then operate it and potentially even pay for the employees that are, going to be working for the operations. Maybe it could be a win-win situation where
could be
they could use the bus for other purposes.
Right. I mean,
then they provide that service.
I mean, and just to give you a sense, so right now we're paying, the cost of the school bus is in excess of $100,000. The fees that the parents pay is about $16,000 a year. So I mean, that's why the city is subsidizing the bus over $100,000. So I'm not quite sure that the Brisbane School District would be willing to subsidize $100,000. I'm not quite sure that the parents, I don't know if all the parents would be able to afford what the full cost of having the bus service would be.
Yeah, looks like it's about $2,400 per student per year.
I mean, it's about they do about 60 to 65 on the bus.
Well, I think we should let this.
Yeah, so
refer
it's
this to the
2x2. Hopefully, you can have your meeting before you take off, Lori.
I just remembered that the parent who emailed us wasn't going to be able to be here tonight. So perhaps you can, staff, forward response, I guess, to the rest of the council members, and then any parents that are here who wish to volunteer to start this communication program is give your information to the city clerk so that we can get in touch with you when we have a meeting to start this discussion and brainstorm on maybe some ideas that parents have and kind of formulate a plan. So we're good till June.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to,
Does anybody else want to speak?
oh, I'm sorry. Was there
Anybody-
anyone else in the public or on the council that would like to speak on this issue?
I think we're
No?
good.
We're good, okay. All right, moving on to item B under old business. Consider approval of agreement with Manat, Phelps, and Phillips to provide legislative assistance related to public policy and regulatory developments by the state of California as it relates to the Brisbane Baylands. Staff report, please.
Yes, you get me again. So, back on December 8th in 2016, the City Council reviewed and approved a contract with Manat, Phelps, and Phillips to monitor and review state legislation as it relates to the city's authority respecting the development on the Baylands. At that time, the contract was for a $5,000 a month retainer, which would be basically monitoring and routine reporting on what was going on at the state legislature. They said that it could go as high as it could go up to $15,000 a month, or if it was a more extensive type of work. What we have found was that for a period of time, the $5,000 a month did in fact was what they were spending. But starting in June, they started working a lot more on this issue. As the city council is aware, they have been spending a lot of time meeting with staff, meeting with council members, working with the state legislators, and reviewing not only potential legislation, but legislation that did happen, and then continuing to work with that. At this point in time, what they would say is, or what they're telling us is that their cost on a monthly basis up to $30,000 a month. The people that we are using is the managing partner and another associate in the firm, which is why it's part of the expense is having somebody at that level helping us through this. The city has paid $60,000 to date. What the Manat, Phelps, and Phillips is recommending for the contract would be that from December 2016 through September of 2017, the cost is $150,000 is what they've already spent. So we would need to spend another $120,000, another $90,000 above we spent $30,000 already. We would need to spend another $90,000 above and beyond what we already spent. That from October through March would be $180,000. The full cost of it going through March of 2018 would be $330,000. And what we're asking for tonight is approval of having a cost of spending $330,000 through March of 2018 for the Manat, Phelps, and Phillips contract. And if if this would go higher, we would come back to the city council and we would let them know that there's in fact more time being spent on this issue than anticipated.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
And hopefully the bullet points makes it easier to understand what is going on than the staff report.
Well, I don't have any questions. I just have a comment that as much as we don't like to spend money and legal fees and stuff like this is really, really important for us right now.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Okay. So
I'd make a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
So approved.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Item A, discuss and consider city hourly employee pay schedule.
Can I ask for a 5-minute break before we
Oh
move
my
on to
gosh,
that?
you were reading my mind.
Sure.
I thought I was on a roll. I'm sorry.
You were